the Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium is a platform that brings together the infrastructure investment space, people who are galvanized around a goal of accelerating an infrastructure-led economic recovery plan. Infrastructure investment remains South Africa's driver of future growth of the economy. And Mameetse Masemola is the head of Infrastructure South Africa, the Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium. She joins us now to talk about it. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Masemola. So, you say the provision of superior quality infrastructure allows an economy to be more efficient. South Africa has certainly spent a number of years pumping in lots of money, billions of rands into it. But just so that the rest of our viewers and those who are not subject matter specialists understand, what are we talking about in terms of superior, and what are the comparisons that are being made to, benchmark this?
So, Tsepiso, well, thank you so much for inviting us to your program. Good evening to you and good evening to the viewers of your show. So what we mean by providing superior infrastructure in the country and how we measure that, we really take a cue from the target that has been set by the National Development Plan that says 80% of GDP must come from. There's a bit of feedback on.
Yes, I do realize
so
that. Yes, we can still hear you. Unfortunately, I did realize that there seems to be some sort of disturbance from the conversation. I'm not sure if it's network connection, but let's see if we can continue with that. So your train of thought, as you were saying.
Yes, that we measure that there's a target that has been set by the National Development Plan, and it says that 30% of GDP must originate from infrastructure investment, and it's measured by what we call, technically speaking, gross fixed capital formation. And it says that of that 30%, 2/3 of infrastructure investments must come from the private sector, and 1/3 of that must be the contribution from government. As it is now, we are sitting at around 14.9% of gross fixed capital formation, and therefore you can see that there is we still are way below the figure that has been targeted by the National Development Plan, and therefore our role is to make sure that we are closing the infrastructure investment gap, and that can only come from the development of a robust and comprehensive project pipeline, both economic and social infrastructure projects, and those projects must in the main be funded. Not necessarily all of it from the fiscus, but they must be able to draw in and leverage private sector participation and private sector financing. So the measure of whether we are deploying quality infrastructure investment in the country is really by the numbers. What does that gross fixed capital formation say to us? So if for as long as we are sitting below that 30%, that has been the target of our National Development Plan, we still have a long way to go in closing that infrastructure investment gap. So our job or our mandate as Infrastructure South Africa is to ensure that there is we develop really a comprehensive infrastructure project pipeline. So these projects that will have economic impact, GDP impact, they will contribute to economic competitiveness. They will contribute to localization, for example, and that these projects must have, they must be actionable. So the project sponsor, the project owner must have the capacity to execute those projects. So that's how we'll be able to measure the quality of those infrastructure projects, Sepiso.
You know, I'm chuckling to myself because I'm thinking, you know, when you talk to technocrats, I'm thinking of a summit just in November where some were saying, you know, when we talk about pipeline, we're no longer having arguments. The capacity must be there and the project must be ready to go. So I'm just thinking, when we're talking about this, we're talking aspirational stuff. What about the critical infrastructure network we have at the moment, which seems to be in danger? I mean, we see the logistical problems, the bottlenecks we experienced last year when it comes to road and freight infrastructure. And there's also the construction sector that has been under threat, continues to be under threat. So how do we improve productivity and raise long-term growth and living standards while we're still grappling with already existing infrastructure?
I'm actually glad that you asked that question, Sepiso, because if you look at the posture that we've adopted for the upcoming Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium of South Africa, is that we will be focusing on the network industries. So these network industries, energy, ICT, water and sanitation, as well as freight transport. These will be the critical sectors that drive economic development. And so the focus will be on the projects that we've already delivered in this space, in these sectors. There are almost 5 billion rand of projects that we have constructed successfully, not we, but the project sponsors and project owners that we work with in relation to the strategic integrated projects. And those will be, in the main, the projects that sit in those sectors, whether it is Wynberg, the interchange, it is Musina Ring, it is the Hazelmere Dam wall raising, etc. projects. Those will be the projects that we've been looking at, and we're looking to accelerate the pace of delivery of those projects. One of the things that we'll be focusing on for the symposium, for example, is the launch of top 12 infrastructure projects that must receive project preparation. So they must receive support from Infrastructure South Africa in preparing and packaging those projects such that they become viable, they become bankable. And those projects will focus in these 4 sectors, Tsepiso, so that we are making sure that the projects that we are looking at are able to move the economic dial. They are able to improve South Africa's economic competitiveness, improving port operations, rolling out the national network of roads, making sure that there is bulk water supplies. There is also the digital communications infrastructure and the network we are also focusing on that from an investment perspective. So you are right on point in saying that those should be the focus areas for us from Infrastructure South Africa side. On the social infrastructure component, our focus really will be on these mega infrastructure investment programs, because it will be more than just one project. So if you look at the schools infrastructure programs or the health infrastructure programs, those will be the programs that we'll be looking at, especially if they can leverage or they can crowd in and they can increase the participation of private sector in both the financing of those projects as well as the delivery of those projects. So we do understand that there is a pressure point from an economy perspective, and really looking at the network sectors. That will be our focus going forward. It is in this the upcoming symposium episode.
And what you're really saying is that this plan, infrastructure development on its own, is a powerful multiplier effect. But the management and governance thereof is a major source of concern. We're just speaking to a pressure group yesterday about the plan for a bridge in the Free State, the cost of about 7 million rand that's already been paid out. But somebody who should be in the know is saying they don't know about the project, they don't know where the money comes from. So this is something that South Africans are worried about as they go to the polls, to make sure that they vote in people with the requisite skills, but the transparency that is needed if we're saying that South Africa requires the right kind of infrastructure investment, and for those investment to believe that not only do we have the skills and capacity, but the will to be held accountable to these projects that we are saying that we are ourselves committing to.
Absolutely. And I mean, we will use also the Symposium to provide an update and report back as part of that accountability and transparency measures, strictly on the, in particular, focusing on the strategic integrated projects, because these are the projects that have been gazetted as essentially golden ticket projects. And so our minister, the department, from Infrastructure South Africa perspective, we must be able to, we measure the level of implementation of these strategic integrated projects, and we'll be providing comprehensive reporting on the level of implementation of these projects. And you are quite right on the governance issues. So as we prepare and package these projects, one of the key areas that we focus on from our side, as well as on the National Treasury side, is around the issues of governance, around the issues of the capacity of the project owner to execute and implement the project, or the requisite skill sets that are the financial and technical engineering capacity that is sitting with that particular municipality or province or public entity or state-owned infrastructure, and of course state-owned entity or state-owned enterprise. And of course the issues around value for money is part of the preparation work, so that we make sure that there is value for money in relation to what is spent or what is planned to be spent around that project, and the value that it unlocks in society and in the economy. There has to be a correlation in relation to those. So as we prepare and package these projects, that's one of the elements that we're looking at, Tshepiso.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us, and appreciate you giving us more information about the symposium.